On the core question of assessing learning, I added the idea of assessing learning together, raising the question, how do we assess significant learning in the teaching that we're associated with in relation to handprint care? And here, if we take subject teaching and conventional assessment, we raise questions for the acquisition and finding out, and for participation and working out. And we teach a subject, in this case using pictures, stories, heritage as a startup. And the questions that we raise are often because the assessment is going to be a questioning process that develops around what have the students managed to find out through their inquiry. How have they managed to extend their empathy and concerns to working out things together, and how is this applied in the compassion that develops around trying out more sustainable, just alternatives. So this requires a process of continuous assessment around the nexus matters of concern. And what we do is we draw on the conventions out of the 1960s, which is the Bloom's taxonomy, which has been progressively developed since then. It was a very important innovation because it led to greater fairness in the school assessment and less prejudice in the school assessment. But it is fairly narrow and limiting because it was developed around the idea of there's a cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains, so therefore what we get is we get the knowledge acquisition, we get the social emotional dimensions, and we get the behavioral dimensions. And it's produced hierarchies that are quite useful for assessment. Using keywords and concepts, can the students ask and answer questions in tests and exams? In translation tasks, practical tasks and activities, what can they do to answer questions? And then also in projects, assignments, and case studies, can report, expand, apply, and find answers. And then in most of our exam-orientated projects, 40% of an exam should be knowing and remembering questions that come out of quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. And 45% should be able to understand and apply. And then you have the higher order analysis, evaluation, and innovation. And what's quite interesting is so much of ESD is involved in analysis, evaluation, and innovation. But it needs the foundation of being able to understand and apply, and therefore having the subject knowledge in play. So these approaches still have important merit, but they need to be expanded. And in the work that's been done by some of my colleagues in the Environmental Learning Center, based on work that was done by D. Fink in the United States, I think, some of my colleagues, Professor Shumba, Professor Lotsa Sitka, and Dr. Caleb Mandikonza, have come up with this exploratory idea of exploring significant learning. And one's got the foundational knowledge in the subject discipline. Can the learner identify, critique, understand, and describe matters of concern using systems thinking with in-depth understanding? Then the application, and you can see this relates to the Bloom's framework. Can the learner analyze, interpret, and apply knowledge to solve problems in relation to sustainable development matters of concern in a particular context? And then integration. Can the learner describe, synthesize, and align different types of knowledge, values, and skills in order to contribute to problem solving and change processes? Human and ecological dimensions. Can the learner show care and concern to others and surroundings? And the cultural dimensions of caring ethics. Can the learner reflect on a situation and show empathy and compassion for self, community, and other life forms? And then finally, learning how to learn. Is the learner able to critique, evaluate, review, formulate, and generate new ideas, suggestions for change? So what we've got is new challenges for the teachers. and working with an open framework like significant learning actions, and not leaving behind the conventional approaches that are still required in school assessment situations. It's a really creative and innovative area for handprint care, for teachers to be able to work with ethics-led approaches, learner-led approaches, and to use continuous assessment and assessment processes that support learning. So here are some interesting references that you might find useful to look at to deepen your understanding and the possibilities for your expansion of assessment in a classroom situation.